Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of RCT2 Reviews. Today, we are going to look at Southwinds Park by GeForce. This is a spotlight-winning park, and a darn good one at that. In my opinion, this is one of the better, dare I say, best realistic parks in the game, and a great example of a Cedar Fair park. We've already looked at a couple of those, including Starpoint by Pacific Coaster. I think this takes things that were established in there and improves on them, and knocks out some incredibly good layouts, along with just great detailing overall. So let's jump in here at the parking lot, and we'll start everything out. We've got our nice detailed infrastructure out here. Tram lane with some of the cones. I like this couple of stacked cones in here, like operations, maybe going to put some out a little bit later, but they have a couple stashed right here. You'll notice some of the outside areas of the park are a little bit sparse. He was dealing with the object limit, so things along here where it's very clean and probably a little more clean than GeForce would typically go. That can be attributed to the object limit, in my opinion, but I think it's still very well done. Looking at the parking lot itself, just something to point out that was super well done are the ADA spaces right here, which follows proper ADA procedure where you need a 5-foot section between every two spaces. So that is a great van accessible ADA space design, so well done there. Missing some crosswalks and parking lot lights and that kind of thing, but again, I'll chalk some of that up to object limit concerns there. Like I said, this is a Cedar Fair park, so we have our kind of traditionally understated Cedar Fair entrances. There's not a whole lot to the entrance until you get inside, and then it gets a little more interesting. A little tiny outside gift shop pavilion here, which I like, and then our 3 ticket booths here. This is the very kind of old school way of doing a front entrance area as far as parks go, and this kind of fits with a lot of the Cedar Fair parks where you have this sort of on-axis approach that you block with a ticket booth in the front. So a little bit of shame because of that, but that's just proper park design. Nice little tree planters here and everything else. Not quite sure what these tables will be used for, since there isn't food around except for over here on this side. Perhaps if this guy jumped over there, it might make a little sense, but we want everybody to get in the park, so let's do it. We'll jump on through here. This reminds me of a kind of a Geauga Lake entrance, perhaps. Here's our little guest services building here, and then an operations building behind it. And then on this side, we've got some restrooms here, and this little gaggle of folks who are queuing up also for guest services, it looks like. So this is some kind of guest services maybe, and this is either the park gift shop, which it looks like it actually may be, and I screwed that up initially. No, there's seats, so it would be a restaurant type building. So on that side, then we have Lucy and Charlie Brown on the stage back here, since Peanuts is an IP that Cedar Fair owns or has the rights to. Come across with this really great reflecting pond. Oftentimes, Cedar Fair has, or parks have the fair, or either the Eiffel Tower here at the end, such as Kings Island, Kings Dominion, or like California's Great America, the double carousel. But I kind of like this more understated approach with the very Cedar Fair-esque sign here with the kind of blue staggered letters and then the little red flag on there. That's a cool detail without actually having to type the name in. Good use of the strollers as go-karts. I think that's a good design. Usually we use, or I use, the GCI Millennium Flyer trains. I actually think these may look a little bit better as carts. Another little ice cream shop up here. What I would say we are missing on the front side is a good gift shop, like your main exit gift shop. Usually the Cedar Fair parks have a decent size one, but up in here we have some other stuff. But it is perhaps missing from the front here. Our first ride that we come to is the Sky Tower. This is an Intamin from 1976. A lot of the Cedar Fair parks have a nice sky ride, not necessarily a double-decker, but some of them do. So nice little finial top on there. We've got our flashing red light and all the good details there. And then we have another restaurant here as we move along, and looks like a path crossing through because of guest navigation issues, but that's totally forgivable. I like the realistic details here, like this screening fence behind. Like you can still see through it, but it's just a screening fence to that dumpster back there, and then some of the other back of house detailing. If you come around the backside here, you have the train. I almost kind of would say that some of these plants could have been thinned out to make the train your centerpiece of this planter bed as you kind of look back through it. So it's a little bit of a shame that didn't have it, because that could be a cool look, seeing this train pull in as you're taking a photo or getting your photo taken in front of the big sign. G-Force uses negative space really, really well. I mean, granted, outside the park you can see all that, but inside the park there's a lot of these kind of open plaza, walkable spaces with just some open grass. I think it's often kind of hard to do open grass in the game because it feels like it needs to be detailed, but it's very well done here, and I think that it fits quite well. Nice little pavilion in the center there with some seats. Here is the Roulette Dodge, a bumper cars ride. That name is taken from Six Flags Great America, which has a similar French-themed area. I do kind of like that. Here's another little walk-up counter. I like the peeps stacked in here as kind of a walk-up or order space. And then we have our theater here. Nice detail here with the bump up of the building for that actual theater space for the curtain and all the stage setup. We'll kind of turn around just to take a good look at some of these back areas here, just because they're so integral to what makes this park as good as it is. All the little yellow bollards here, maybe used a little bit to excess, but still really darn good. The striping here, all the signage at each of the entrances. I really like these cutaways of the diagonal to fit the door in there, or the raised area here, the lighting on the backside, and just how much detail is in there. A little transformer here in the green, and then the ladders and everything up to those HVAC units, which aren't overdone. I mean, they're not super detailed, but it's enough to kind of hint that it's there and it's been thought through. Like, you don't see a massive chiller sitting back here, which you would typically see for something like this, but it's just done really well and clean. Honestly, the cleanliness may be one of the detriments in the park in the end, just because it is so clean. That you don't get a lot of that sort of aged feel to it, but honestly, I like it. I think it's a good look. But this is a nice facade. The lights really help, the chaser lights around the theater here, theater itself. And then continuing along, we have another little games stall here. This is a very Cedar Fair type detail where you have the single game stall kind of stuck out from the other ones that bump out on the other side here. Again, chaser lights used really well. And then the Zephyr, which is a Hoos swing ride right here. Over here we have Wildcat, so Zamperla Wild Mouse, spinner Wild Mouse. So this is the, I guess, knockoff spinning coaster. So Chun was the original of the spinning Wild Mouse types. Good layout here and great supports. Done very, very well. It would have been nice to see the spinning locked on the top section of the slaloms, that's how it typically runs, before it gets up to the second section. But I have been on a couple that it spins the whole way, though not necessarily a supposed to be done that way. Little chain lift here, which was required to get it through, unfortunately, but these do have some pretty poor friction on them. But great supports. I like the little space frame underneath of it, so it clearly is a portable coaster that's being used here, kind of plopped in place, and just good kind of detailing throughout, including the transfer track and everything. Always like to see block sections on these, but the block sections in the game slow things down so much that it's a totally forgivable thing to say. We're just gonna avoid it entirely. So here's our carousel, Grand Carousel from PTC in 1976, up perched on the little hill on the side here. Although for a Grand Carousel, it doesn't quite seem as grand as of a positioning as you might expect. I'd almost think this is a center plaza type thing that either goes back here towards the entrance or sits here in the plaza. But it's appropriately given some nice raised landscape around it and a couple of seating areas and everything, and a really nice kind of clean pavilion building too. It's kind of hard to get lower pavilions that still show a little bit of the ride, so while you can't see it super well hanging out under there, you do still get a little bit of that peak within that octagonal structure. So we'll continue under the railroad here. One point on the railroad that's kind of neat is it is a one-way or a loop that reuses the same track. So we have our loop here that kind of wraps the whole area that we've just looked at, and then the turnaround loop is down here. It's a much smaller loop, and here's the second station. I always like that look. Kind of limits the amount of trains you can use in some sense, but it is kind of a neat design. But we'll go across under the bridge, and then we get to the Coasters Drive-In. This is a Cedar Fair staple with the bright, obnoxious pastel colors. Used very well. The forms here are just perfect. Good structure, good Art Deco details, and that entry sign is pretty nice. Walking by the coaster here, which we'll look at here in just a second, we have Megalodon. This is an Arrow from 1988. This was the same time that Arrow was doing the big triples for the Six Flags parks, so this fits right in with that, and the layout is superb. So we'll continue there once we get to the station. Seating area overlooking the coaster and this nice little fountain here. Again, landscaping is the strong point in this park, especially done incredibly well. Right here you have the Witch's Wheel. This is a Hus 1979 Enterprise, and then over here another game for the ladder game. All right, so here's the entrance. Would have liked to have seen like a larger sign, perhaps, but it's a little bit understated for the entrance, perhaps. But you go in through the queue line here, have our drinks, soda machines as you walk in. That was a thing that a lot of the Cedar Fair parks used to do in their queue lines. But we get over to the station, which is a pretty standard station, kind of small, but fits. I like some of the details here, although I would have liked to have seen the station gone. I think that was maybe a miss there. But we drop out of the station and onto the lift hill, which has some excellent supports, actually throughout the whole thing, especially the loop supports. Really well done. Probably the best Arrow looping coaster supports that I have seen in the game, especially some of these here on the diagonal. It looks appropriate, properly kind of light and airy support, even though it's a pretty beefy structure. Alrighty, so we're going to dive off of this first drop here as we get up to the machine or the cog up here in the motor, which has some pretty nice little details there. Drop steeply down and hit this corner at speed, go up and loop through. At the time, Arrow was making all their loops the same size and just changing the elevation of them to get the right speed. So that's why you have these weird loops all the way up top. Get another two loops here, a very Viper Magic Mountain-esque start and finish, to be honest, as we come up here to the mid-course breaks, have this sort of awkward transition down into the Batwing element that Arrow called a boomerang, I believe. And then we wrap down here into the double corkscrew, not going with the typical trope of pathway underneath, which I think can be overused at times. So this is well done that it's there and visible, but it doesn't actually have the path going under. Dive down underneath the lift hill and end with a loop that is, or a helix. That's a pretty common Arrow trait for these guys, which I quite like. 3 trains overall. They are 7 cars apiece, which is what they should be. And a really nice transfer track here with an open bay, which is kind of typical. Really like this transfer table. The sliding transfer is pretty standard. The amount of control panels here, I don't know if they're necessarily be used as control panels, but you really only need, say, 2, for example, kind of one here and then one over in the bay. And then the rest of these could be thought of as, say, air pressure tank or pressured air tanks and things like that for the actual clamp brakes. But well done. Also, some of the little details here on the station, as you can see with the elevator, looping over, around, and through the photo building for the ride exit. So we'll continue up this way and get to the open air covered theater here. So this is the Summer Splash Spectacular show, which I kind of like that that's a thing that you've added in there at least just to see. And then on the other side, you have a restroom building here. I like that there's a lot of restrooms in the park. I usually forget to put restrooms in my parks, so mine are always under restroomized, I guess, but well covered here. Here's a nice little sign for the theater. If I had any complaint about the landscaping, is that in some places it's almost too thick. Like here's your sign, but you can't even see what you're looking at until you get over here to see that there's a theater here, because this is just such a thick landscape area. I mean, it just looks good, but you also want to open up some of those sight lines at times. Alrighty, so here we get to the bat, which does have a nice little entry sign here. So the bat is an Arrow from 1992. That was as Arrow was in the midst of doing a lot of their final suspended coaster designs. This one has a similar type layout to Vortex, now the bat at, or Top Gun, now the bat at Kings Island, and Vortex at Canada's Wonderland. So we'll have a flat corner on the top with a steep dive down. Turn this way. And then we go up, turn by the station, and then we're going to have this left-right diving corner down and then up where we hit this sort of elongated figure 8 type section. Really, these suspended coasters are all about elevation changes with corners. And a lot of times they're flat corners, kind of like this. I love this section where it's just wide corners with just subtle elevation changes, and that layout just looks so good throughout. Support's done super well using the newer beam objects. These supports could be done either as a lattice or not, depending on when. 1992 Arrow is more doing this kind of stuff, which is more accurate. The thicker supports here are a good touch versus the thinner supports elsewhere. And then the lattice on the lift hill is natural, so that fits really well. Great layout overall. I like that every time the coaster gets down to the ground, there's a ride-restricted fence in there, so that's very nicely done. And good detailing through there. So first drop here, this guy here, then over here we also have the little doorway and the ride-restricted fencing sign. And then the transfer track is a pretty simple transfer. It's just straight across and it slides. The train is just big enough to fit that, and a 5-car train, you could do 6. I know Vortex at Canada's Wonderland did run with 5 for a while, although I believe now it is back at 6. So that could be an either-or decision there. Here we have the Viking Fury. So this is a Perla swinging ship out over the water. Nice touch as well. Good seating areas around here. Almost wish the seating wasn't quite in front of this so didn't have the viewing area there, but good look throughout for that space, and the nice work on the shoestring there of this type of a ride. Then there is another little shop here, it looks like, or an addition to this restaurant on this side. So then they come back here and look at the river. So this river kind of cuts through the whole thing to this lake on here, and then over on the other side. And then we have this great midway that walks down the whole area. So we're kind of going up this backwards, but we'll take a look at it anyway. So here's the Ford Motor Company. This is an Arrow car ride with some super cool details. I love the use of the suspended single rail coaster just for the guide rail here. I think it looks way better than the in-game car ride stuff. A little bit of the challenge in that the pavement sometimes becomes a little bit large, perhaps, but I like the look overall. Good planters here. Super nice billboard detailing. Let me spin around here. This super cool billboard here with the design, gas station, which is somewhat of a classic on these kind of rides, and wrap around. I do love the clock on the entrance sign. And again, a nice simple station, but it's appropriately detailed. This is the kind of station that you'd see from these sorts of parks. Up here we have our Windseeker. I'm assuming it's called Windseeker, which it is. This is a Mondial from 2011. Cedar Fair installed a bunch of these at 301 feet tall. Had a fair bit of trouble on some of these, but they did all right. This one's just continuously moving. It would have been neat to see this done as a shoestring that went up and down with the car spaced a little more. I think that kind of brings it down just a little bit, but the top detailing with the carriage and with the cap on top up by the motor room is done very, very well, and that kind of saves it. Also, the sign is this vertical piece here with the little flag pieces on there. Absolutely spot on as far as the sign goes for this type of ride. And then I do like the path detailing here. I think one complaint of some of G-Force's work is color, and that sometimes it comes off a little more muted than it maybe ought to be. I can understand the argument in some spots, but not all of them. What I do like here is the striping on the pathway. I'd almost have reversed it and just had this whole thing brick, more historic kind of based with perhaps a different color cutting across, but I could take it or leave it either way, how that's done. Here's another little gift shop area, as you can come in and see, or actually this is another restaurant. Little grab and go in there. Cedar Fair is typically heavier on restaurants than they are in shops, which I can understand. All right, so let's see which way we want to go. We're gonna backtrack a little bit, cross over here. This is a great bridge. I love the use of the brick there. And turn around. We have a swan boats ride here. These are PTC swan boats from 1982. Really well done little dock here on the ground with the turnstile as well. And some seating on either side of another one of these restaurants. I like the little board here with some information, kind of like a park map board. And if you keep going, you get over to the second of the train station. So this is the Old Northwest Railroad's second station right here, which brings us into the kids area. So we have our little monster truck ride. This is Off-Road Rally, a little Hopkins ride, which is done well. I like that it has the log bumps animation, but then has the custom log bumps in there. I think that's pretty well done and a good way to bring those back since the actual stuff is hidden. We have our bus ride here, the flying school bus, and then right here is the mini helicopters. Would have been cool if those were working, but very nicely done there. And then here's a Great Pumpkin Coaster. It doesn't have a brand name, but it's definitely a miler based on the cars chosen. Properly done with a 6-car train, and this kind of oval layout with a couple of hills on it. I like this octagonal station. Looks kind of nice. Again, would be nice to see the station platform go away, but it is forgiven, I'd say. And then the little pumpkins scattered throughout is a nice look at theming on this type of a ride. It would have been kind of nice to see a little more color in here, especially being a kids area. The path is the kind of more muted with the brown. And you do have the little canopies here that are colored as well. And then these little flags overhead through the space maybe could have been a brighter color. Perhaps the dark purple could have been a yellow instead or something, just to call out some of this area. And then perhaps these bits like on whatever this shop is or grab and go. Maybe that roof gets a color instead, just to make it pop a little bit more. I mean, the good attempt with the purple fences here also helps, but it is a little more muted. This is where the color issues jump out. I mean, I didn't even notice the kite-eating tree ride here, but now that I do, I'll call it out because it's a really nice detail there with the little bushes on top for the tree. Challenge is you just can't see it because the landscaping blends behind it. So something to consider for future endeavors. Another restroom back here, and then a little octagonal building here. This is the Snoopy store. So we are still in the kids area, even though this one feels a little bit disjointed since the flume goes over top of it. But I'm glad to see that there's another little gift shop in there and some other things like that. Alrighty, as we continue along, there's the flume, which has a really good layout on there, but we haven't gotten to that station yet, so we're not going to look at that just yet. We're going to go to the back here and check out 2 more coasters first. So we have 2 coasters here. We have an inverted coaster by B&M, and we have a limb bowl by Premier. Let's jump over to the inverted coaster first, just because I like it more. So this is Afterburn. Clearly, it was a Top Gun before that, and now it's become Afterburn since they've lost the licensing once they bought the parks from Paramount. This is one or more of the clue-ins that this used to be a Paramount park, which has since been acquired by Cedar Fair. So another great little detail there with the design. So let's go on board with train number 1 here, appropriately 8-car train. Great looking station with the little structure here based off of the Carowinds Afterburn ride. Same with the little fighter jet that's up here. Really great work as far as the quarter tile goes. All right, so we're going to go through our pre-drop here, which is appropriate for B&Ms at the time. Nice diving fan curve into the first loop. We have a trench behind here, which is quite nice. Large Immelman as we drop down back under the lift hill and up to a 0G roll, which is a must on any inverted coaster as far as I'm concerned. Wrap up and around to the diagonal brake run, which doesn't slow you down one bit. Through the corkscrew, a couple of corners there, another corkscrew, helix diving out over the water, and then up into a diagonal brake run, and then the turn into the final brakes. Super cool layout, super well done. It's going to be so nice when OpenRCT finally develops the diagonal brakes and block brakes, just to be able to use those block brakes and slow it down a little bit, because I'd say this corkscrew is maybe a little fast, but on the whole, this layout is really well done. It's hard to do an out and back inverted coaster, which is sort of kind of what this is, where it goes all the way out here and then comes back. So between this brake run and that helix, I mean, it doesn't really change direction. It's all going in the same diagonal direction, but it just looks really good and flows really well. So like right here, we've got this crossover of the water, a little fast there, but then the crossover of the lift hill again, over top of the Immelman and then through that inversion. Just really well done, and the support's also done incredibly well. Would be kind of neat to see this ride in bright red, just to call it out a little bit more, but this is not out of the question for something Cedar Fair would do with the very slick jet black color to it. Again, transfer track done, A+, super well done, and all those little kind of details are what makes these parks as good as they are. Couple little stands here, a little picnic grove in the back here, with some of these other maintenance areas. So this is sort of like a rides maintenance area with all the garage doors, a couple of vehicles. Here's a portable office trailer and another building that all definitely fit the kind of overall look of these things. Alrighty, and brings us to this guy here, which is Flight of Fear. So these started in the Paramount parks at both Kings Island and Kings Dominion as Outer Limits Flight of Fear, themed to the Outer Limits TV show / movie. And since they have been rebranded as just Flight of Fear, so some of the theming taken away, but the station itself is really well done here, fits that overall look of the real Flight of Fear stations, has that sort of government science testing facility look. I like the pylon here, and then the big doors on the front. 12E, a nice reference to disaster transport at Cedar Point. So let's get inside, where we have an appropriately themed, because it's entirely indoors, Flight of Fear coaster. It's kind of funny that we just reviewed one of these yesterday as a design submission, and there's been a couple other ones throughout, so it's kind of amusing to see yet another one of these, but this was done really well. The layout is great, utilizing the Premier track in here, and it has all the proper designs. Unfortunately, these don't get drawn with the Premier track, but we can still enjoy the overall look here with the quarter loop and everything else. So Cobra Roll, Immelman, up and around to the mid-course brake run here, which on the Flight of Fear grabs pretty hard. And you can actually see that grabbing there and slowing down to almost a crawl. That's probably my one complaint about the real ones. As we do this whole winding down the structure here and then around the back and through that final inversion there. Because he put it in a box, he didn't have to do the supports on it, which is a good move as far as I'm concerned, because that sounds painful to do. What's really well done, I think, here is how well that box looks. I mean, you back up and look at the whole thing, and it doesn't really jump out at you. I mean, it's a big structure, but it's done pretty well for being a big structure. It doesn't feel like it's dominated. And what I think is a clever way of doing that is you can see how the supports, once we get or the landscape, once we get rid of the trees, works its way up here. So on the back side, you're a good 3 or 4 tiles higher than the front, so you get a little bit less tall of a structure there. And I think that's a clever, smart move for the overall look of the thing, just to not make it feel so massive. You really don't. You want to watch the sizes of your buildings so they don't dominate each other as you're going through. All right, so back out and back out onto the main path. We have another little merchandise area here. Love the staff inside. Um, Over here we have Delirium. This is a Huss Frisbee ride from 2005. Nice detailing here, like with the lights. We saw that over in Windseeker as well. And a nice hacked Frisbee ride as well. These are great. I like these as far as Frisbees go. They are my favorite of the type. All right, turning around, we get to the Chippewa Falls. This is the log flume here. And the queue is on the other side, kind of over. No, it's not. It is right here by the totem pole, which is a cool detail there using the standard totem pole. So you walk down, go up and over the bridge, and then down into the turntable. And then it will wrap around to first lift hill, a couple little drops here, and then our first drop over top of the reservoir over here. I like that this hints at this actually being an artificial pond with the concrete kind of reservoir shape around that on either side, so you can kind of look at this as the retention pond for the actual ride itself. And then we come up to the drop. This is a pretty common thing in a lot of the early Arrow log flumes is the double drop, just so that you can get that drop and the slowdown without stacking up boats too quickly. So it's able to help you get capacity up while still maintaining a safe distance between the boats, because you don't want the next one coming down creating a wave which can upset this boat in the front. So typically there'd be a switch up here that would send them either direction. That is a pretty complicated hack, so I can totally understand why that wasn't done here. One comment is the exit for the circular station here is on the outside of the circle, so you kind of stop here and get off on this side. There's always a little bit of give and take with the circular stations in RCT, because in real life that log flume would never stop. It just keeps going around this turntable, with the turntable moving at the same speed as the boat. You transition onto the turntable, get on, and just keep on going. But obviously you can't do that in the game at the moment, so there's that trade-off of having to stop. So we stop here for the entrance and over here for the exit. Typically, you don't get off on the outside. I don't think I've ever seen that. Not to say that you couldn't, I guess. But there it is. So either way, here is the Revolution. So this is a Huss from 1996. It's got some nice little theming bits on top of it, and a little queue line there. We wrap over to here, and this is the Sawyer Hall, it looks like. This is a theater. I have a circus buried inside there. Another great theater facade. Actually, a lot of theaters in this park, with this guy, the one at the front here, the main one, and then the open air theater on the backside here, which I like, because a lot of these early parks did have that kind of a thing. All right, we're going to come back over to here because I definitely missed that entrance because there were so many trees here. But that's not to say that that's not how it properly is in real life. I would say King's Dominion's Grizzly is buried so far deep in the woods that sometimes it's kind of hard to miss, or hard to find the queue line, I'd say. So this is a PTC from 1984. Kind of has a similar layout to some of the DIN models as well, but this follows the double out and back with the kind of dog leg layout that a lot of the early Taft/Paramount parks did have. So we'll wait for this coaster train here to dispatch. We're going to use PTC 6-car trains. I like that most of the rides in this park, coaster-wise, do have multiple color trains. That is a thing that Cedar Fair parks do, and I've always kind of liked that overall design. Makes it easier to identify and just makes it kind of a fun detail. All right. For as buried as the entrance of the thing is, there's a really great viewing area right over here of this first drop, which I kind of wish some of the other ones had, but liking that quite a bit. Have our pylon up top here, over top of the lift with a do not stand up sign, presumably. As we drop down and come up for the first turnaround, these are flat turns up high, especially just because you are going so slow. Once we get to the middle here, the choice can be to have this banked or unbanked. It's a pretty low bank in real life, but I can support the banking decision here. Again, unbanked, but diving off of that corner a little sooner than the other one, coming through another of those tight corners. Now banked through the structure, up following the drop, and then we're going to go sort of inside the structure on the way across. Maybe it would have been nice to have this structure coming out a little bit of a cathedral structure, but just to have this return run underneath. But I get it. Nice little transfer track on the front side of the station before the lift hill, which is appropriate. I like this queue line quite a bit. You can kind of barely see it in some of the spots as it winds its way through the trees, but this feels very old school Cedar Fair / Paramount / Taft. I think that was a very key thing that a lot of those parks did. Just they were very much based in the wilderness, and this retains that feel super well. And with the landscaping as close to the ride as it is, you really don't see that on current or modern coasters because the landscape hasn't been given time to grow in. And a lot of the new kind of rides, you really want to have that space to get a high reach in there for inspections and the like, and all that kind of a thing. All right, back out onto the main path. We have... I'm going to go over this way and wrap around so then we can get to the final two coasters kind of last. Over in the corner here is the Whitewater Falls Splash Boats ride. This is an Intamin from 1991. What I like about this one is the covered turnaround on top. This is a very Dorney Park thing, and some of the other parks do it as well. But it's got some cool detailing here, a little bit rustic as far as that goes with the metal roof and some of these other little details, but pop out and drop down and a big splash. Unfortunately, these rides don't have these boats don't have the sprites drawn in for, or the images drawn in for the vertical diagonal lift, but to me that's a small sacrifice to make for something like this. I do think this is the best way to do these kind of rides. 4 boats may be a bit many on a ride as short as this one, but there are nice details here like the davit arm and the 2 bars here to pick up those boats, and then the space back here to set them down and the little maintenance area as well. Good covered queue as well on the side there. All right, so here we have Slingshot. This is a fun time Slingshot ride from 2017. I like the little detail here with the arrow and the signage as you come in the backside. This would be an upcharge ride at the Cedar Fair parks. And I like the little floor detailing there and the little magnet in the middle. So these are held by an electromagnet as everything is tensioned, and then they're let go and shot up once the tension is appropriate. Typically, these columns on either side are lattice, but this is a good selection of object because it's really appropriately steep, and I like the color change as you go up the thing. It feels correct. These can be done with or without the little ball around the seats. So either one is a good choice, but I think this little slingshot ball is a proper good design for that. So coming back around to the restroom, and we get to this guy, which is Copperhead. This is a B&M in 2008 B&M Hypercoaster. All right, we're going to pick this one up on the lift hill, and then we'll catch up on some of those details here in a little bit. So this has kind of a more curvy layout than some of the B&M Hypers. It's really long for one. According to the game, it is 6,000 feet long, which the game over-exaggerates maybe a little bit, but this is certainly a massive coaster. It kind of has a Raging Bull feel to it in some sections with the curves, but also has that more modern Diamondback and feel to it as far as that goes. Lots of airtime hills, helix up into the diagonal brake run. Diagonal brakes just look good in the game, to be honest. I think that's a trope that works well. And then we have 2 more airtime hills, a little bit of a trim brake here. Typically, your trim brakes are going to be partway up the hill, but you can't do that in the game. So if you got to put a trim brake in, it's going to be on the flat section here. Last helix up and into the final brakes on this side. Got a large enough section of brakes, so this is a 3-train ride, even though it's only running 2 at the moment. Third one's in the shed, which is just maybe a little too small. This guy is hurting here. I don't think you can get the gate down to, or the garage door down, I suppose. But nicely done with the brake run. Brake run should be able to hold all 3, or as many vehicles as you have, the brake run should be able to hold. So being there's 3 trains here, you can hold 1 here, 2 here, 3 here. That is how you help approximate your length, essentially. That's a good rule of thumb to work from. Really nice detail here with the B&M motor, and we have the chain return all the way down, and then also a little bit of a platform up here at the top. So 2008 is when Cedar Fair put in Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland. They used the new staggered trains, which were much longer, and they went on to do 3 of those, so Behemoth, Diamondback, and Intimidator at Carowinds. But G-Force is going for the regular trains here, which I appreciate because I think they look way better. And I kind of like the original look of those just in general. Again, multicolored trains here, kind of Maverick-esque coloring. And I like the thicker supports. They glitch a little bit, but they are a little bit thicker. B&Ms are really, really good at doing thin supports that really make the coaster seem like it's floating almost. But you have a pretty big lift hill here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sort of 6 supports on the whole thing, which is absolutely appropriate. Support work is just done super well throughout, and very nicely done on the whole thing. Again, ride restricted areas, park fencing, all of that kind of nice little details. All right, come across here to the action zone. This was a Paramount type of area that was in kind of all their parks, or at least most of them. So here is Scream Zone. This is an Intamin 1999 tower. They did a couple of different towers. There was the second gen, which had the different rails on either side and the different vehicles, and then they had the gyro drop, which is like this one. Multicolored up that the pole, and a good top cap on here with the checkerboard as well. Really, really like the entry sign. That fits and looks exactly like the real thing. Over on this side, you have another Sky Coaster product. This is a Ride Entertainment product, and a 2-tower variety. Would have been cool to see the hack in this one to have it running, but there was already enough things going along, and I think with object concerns, that can be an easy trade-off. A couple little shops, also a little grab-and-go restaurant here, and another little shop on the outside. With more of these plazas that I called out earlier as being so nicely done, just like the different shape of them, like this is sort of a trapezoid-looking shape, and then you have the couple of diamonds here, and just some differently shaped things other than a square or a rectangle. And there's a bunch of them and a lot of good trees, so the tree coverage here is certainly not lacking. Alrighty, so let's get to our last coaster. So this is Rattler. This is a CCI from 2001. CCI went out of business in 2002, so this one's get right under the wire. This is based off of Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure, and it is long. Zoom out twice to even get in the whole layout. This is appropriately long. Shivering Timbers is Michigan Adventure's signature coaster. It has been for a lot of years now, since they don't get a whole lot of love. Using a 6-car train, could have done 7, but 6 is just fine too. And it's the pure definition of an out and back coaster. So we have the big first drop into the tunnel. Love the tunnel. Airtime hill 1, 2, 3, and then a double up here, and the traditional CCI turnaround, which is a dip and then comes up on the other side. Here is a mid-course brake run, which could be or could not be active. Shivering Timbers is not active, so past a little photo booth there. Lots of hills here, another double up. Here is Trick Track. Shivering Timbers had that in initially, where it just banks to either side, even though it's flat and straight. That has since been removed. And then here's endless count of airtime hills through the structure, which is one of the cooler bits. And finally ending with a great double helix here, which I just love this helix. The combination of the banked and not makes it a little more squat than a lot of helixes, but it just looks good. And with the custom supports around it, it really looks nice. Standard transfer track is appropriate. Uncovered is totally appropriate too. Again, nice simple station. A lot of the stations here are rectangles, which could be viewed as plain, but at the same time, that's what Cedar Fair does. And what Paramount did. These are pretty plain, simple stations with lots of good detailing. He's got the air gates inside. He's got the storage bins. These are very nice because Cedar Fair does these storage bins colored by the train and then opens them up individually. Have our enclosed operator booth here, the yellow line, and just all those kind of details there. We did do footers underneath here on the outside. Wooden coaster footers in the game are a little bit hard to go around. This is maybe the easiest way to do it, just kind of plastering them on the outside, since then you don't have to fix up some things underneath. But it may not be my favorite look as far as that goes. Right here, just laying in the path, we have Iron Grizzly, notes for 2020. And that's this guy. So here we're going to see an RMC refresh of this coaster. I'd be curious to see what that would have actually looked like should we have gotten to that time. So lots of cool speculation with that one. And then on the backside here, we have more of the back of house buildings with good parking spaces, parking lots, a little sign here, and everything else. This goes all the way out the side here and then wraps around the backside too and connects all of this together as a service road. I like this dry retention pond out here and then the wet retention pond over here on that side, and how this coaster just comes and frames the whole thing. At Michigan's Adventure, the entrance is kind of over here, and then you come in and your entire drive into the parking lot is right along this coaster, and you can just get a sense of how huge and how long it is. And I kind of get the feeling that that's what G-Force has done here also for that layout. Kind of interesting to see when you look at the overall here how the coasters are laid out, largely to the back and largely to this side. So as the park has developed and added more things and kind of spreads out further from that entrance is where you have the space for these larger coasters, and some of the older stuff towards the front, like this Arrow coaster, and the newer stuff towards the back, like the Invert and the 2008 Hyper Coaster here, which makes sense that this would be sort of shoehorned in to this this narrow plot of land that they had. Kind of interesting to see both of these out and back coasters right next to each other, but they're sufficiently different with the curves that the Hyper has versus the wooden coaster next to it. So things that you would typically expect, and looks good. But on the whole, I mean, these coasters are all great. They're all really well done, great representations of their type and the era that they were built in. I like when people get that right, not just the coaster type and design of the coaster, but also the era of what the manufacturers were doing at what time. I think that was really well done. So I think that's going to wrap up our review of Southwinds here. So well done on the coaster, or all the coasters. Well done on the park. The detailing. Again, I mean, as far as criticisms go, there's not too many. I think landscaping, just as far as being as thick as it is beautiful landscaping, but maybe could be thinned out a little bit every now and then. And then just some color variation on occasion, making things a little bit brighter. Theme parks tend to go more err on the side of brighter than not, which I can understand that. You want to make it kind of that bright, cheery atmosphere, but it's also a little bit of a challenge to balance that with the Cedar Fair, Paramount type parks that were very muted, were very kind of wood-based, metal-based, and lots of browns, lots of grays, lots of blacks in there. So it's tough to strike a balance, but I think you've done very well here in this park. In my opinion, this is one of the better realistic parks we've seen in the game as far as branded parks go. Six Flags Cedar Fair, this is one of the best and has done incredibly well. So congratulations on the Spotlight win. Super well deserved. Would love to see even more of these. They just never get old for me. I love these parks. So congratulations on this amazing park. If you would like to see any of the other parks reviewed or your own park reviewed, please send me a private message at nedesigns.com. My username is Cedar.6, or leave a comment in the YouTube video. And as always, I will continue to get to these reviews kind of as they come in. We've got a nice little backlog here going. And subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more of these as they come in. So until next time, thank you very much for watching, and congratulations to G-Force on a great park such as this.